I never forgot your smile, he said into the darkness, his voice breaking just as the studio lights snapped off and footsteps echoed too close for comfort. The hallway was narrow, breathing dust and old varnish, a place where cables coiled like sleeping snakes and the air hummed with leftover music. Rosé's back hit the cool wall as the door slammed somewhere behind them, the click of a lock too loud, too final. Her heart raced ahead of her thoughts. She smelled metal and citrus and something warm, his cologne, so close it made her hands tremble. Bruno's palm found her wrist instinctively, not possessive, not bold, just desperate, as if the world had tilted and he needed an anchor. "Don't move," he whispered, pulling her into the shadow as a pair of producers passed, laughing oblivious. The laughter faded. Silence returned, thick and intimate. Bruno didn't let go. Neither did she. The hug happened without permission, without planning, a reflex born from years of restraint. His arms closed around her back, gentle at first, then firmer, as if testing whether she was real. Rosé's breath caught. She felt the tremor in his chest before she realized she was shaking too. The hallway smelled of rain tracked in from the loading bay and the faint ozone of hot lights cooling down. Her cheek pressed against his shoulder, and for a moment the noise in her head, contracts, headlines, the rules they had learned to obey, fell silent. She pulled back, eyes searching his face in the dim glow of an exit sign. Bruno looked older here, not in years but in the weight he carried. His eyes, usually playful, were stripped bare. He swallowed, jaw tight, a habit he had when he was afraid of saying too much. "This isn't," Rose began, then stopped. Her voice betrayed her, softening, betraying everything she tried to keep composed. "I know," he said quickly. "I know what this is supposed to be. I know what it can't be." He exhaled, a laugh that didn't reach his eyes. "But I also know what it already is." Memory flooded the space between them, uninvited. A late-night session years ago when a melody had refused to land, when she'd smiled at a mistake and he'd felt something irreversible shift. Her smile had been small then, crooked, apologetic, as if she didn't realize its power. He had written 3 songs after that night and erased her name from all of them, convinced distance could do what discipline couldn't. Rosé's fingers curled into the fabric of his jacket. She had trained herself to be precise, to measure affection like notes on a staff, never lingering too long. Her fear wasn't of scandal, it was of wanting something she couldn't protect. She had seen what longing did to people who lived under lights that never turned off. "Why now?" she asked, barely audible. "After all this time?" Bruno looked down the hallway as if the answer might be painted on the wall. "Because I tried everything else," he said. "I tried turning it into music and hiding behind the applause. I tried telling myself it was just admiration, just chemistry. I tried forgetting." He met her gaze again. "I can forget a lot of things. Your smile isn't one of them." The confession landed softly but with devastating weight. Rose felt tears gather, surprising her with their heat. She had promised herself she wouldn't cry here, not in a place that had seen too many dreams unravel. Yet her body betrayed her resolve. Bruno lifted a hand, hesitated, then brushed his thumb beneath her eye, wiping a tear away with reverence. "I don't want to hurt you," he said, fear threading his words. "I don't want to make this harder than it already is." She leaned into his touch, closing her eyes. "You already did," she whispered, "by being honest." They stood there, breathing in sync, the hallway holding them like a secret it had sworn to keep. Rose thought of the sacrifices she had made quietly, the nights she chose silence over truth. She thought of how often she had replayed that first smile in her mind, wondering if he remembered it the same way. Knowing now that he had, that he couldn't forget, felt like both a gift and a wound. A distant door creaked. Time resumed its march. Rose stepped back, steadying herself, the performer returning to her spine. "We can't stay," she said, though every word resisted leaving her mouth. "I know," Bruno replied, nodding. Acceptance didn't mean ease, it meant courage. He took a breath, the kind that precedes a hard decision. "But I needed you to know. Not as a song, not as a rumor, as the truth." She reached for his hand one last time, squeezing it once, an intimate punctuation. "I do know," she said, "and that's enough to carry for now." They parted without spectacle, slipping into opposite directions as the studio came back to life. Yet something had changed. The hallway, once just a passage between rooms, had become a place where honesty lived, where a smile remembered had finally been spoken aloud. And as Rose walked away, heart still racing but steadier than before, she understood that some confessions don't demand immediate answers. Some exist simply to be felt, deeply, and to leave behind a warmth that no darkness can erase. The elevator doors slid shut too fast, sealing the echo of that hallway behind them, but the heat of it followed Rose into the reflective box of steel where her own eyes stared back at her, glassy and exposed. "Don't look like that," Bruno said suddenly through her earpiece, his voice low, urgent, cutting through the hum of the descending lift. "Anyone could read it on your face." She inhaled sharply, pressing a hand to her chest as if to slow her pulse. "You shouldn't be talking to me right now," she whispered back, lips barely moving. "If someone's monitoring—" "I know the risks," he interrupted, sharper than before. "I also know what happens if we pretend nothing just happened." The elevator dinged. The doors opened to a corridor flooded with white light and people moving too fast. Rose stepped out first, spine straight, smile practiced, the idol again. Bruno followed at a distance, sunglasses on, jaw set. To anyone watching, it was ordinary. To them, it was war. Backstage buzzed with chaos. A stylist tugged at Rosé's sleeve. "You're late. The director wants you now." "I was rehearsing," she replied smoothly. Bruno scoffed under his breath as he passed her, just close enough for only her to hear. "You always were good at lying when it mattered." Her head snapped toward him. "You don't get to say that." He stopped walking. Turned. The room seemed to tilt. "I don't." His voice was calm, but his eyes burned. "You disappeared after that night. No call. No message. Nothing. Tell me what I was supposed to think." She laughed once, brittle. "You think I had a choice? You think I didn't replay that night until it hurt to breathe?" They were too close now. Too visible. A manager glanced their way, sensing tension like static. Bruno leaned in, reckless. "Then why did you smile like that tonight? Why look at me like you were daring me to remember?" Her composure cracked. "Because I never stopped," she hissed. "Because every time you sing, I hear what you don't say. Because I'm tired of being the quiet one while you turn our ghosts into melodies." Silence slammed between them, thick and dangerous. "You think it's easy," he shot back. "I bleed on stage, so you don't have to. I bury us in lyrics, so no one asks your name." "That doesn't make you a hero," she said, voice shaking now. "It makes you a coward." The word hit hard. Bruno flinched, then laughed, humorless. "Maybe, but I'm not the one pretending this doesn't matter." A producer shouted Rosé's name. Time was up. She stepped back, eyes wet but fierce. "This matters too much. That's the problem." She turned and walked away, heels clicking like a countdown. Bruno watched her go, chest tight, every instinct screaming to follow. Instead, he leaned against a wall, ripping off his sunglasses, dragging a hand through his hair. Hours later, the studio was nearly empty. Night pressed against the windows. Bruno sat alone at the piano, fingers hovering, unable to land on a single chord. The door creaked. Rose stepped inside quietly. "I told them I needed to rear a chord," she said. "They bought it." He didn't look up. "You shouldn't be here." "I know." She crossed the room anyway, sat beside him, close enough that their knees brushed. Neither moved away. "I called you a coward," she said softly. "That wasn't fair." He finally turned to her. "It was honest." She swallowed. "So is this." She reached into her jacket and pulled out a folded sheet of paper, worn at the edges. "You left this in my bag years ago. Lyrics. You never asked for it back." He stared at it like a ghost. "You kept that." "I memorized it," she said. "Every word you crossed out. Every line you were afraid to sing." Bruno's breath hitched. "Why didn't you ever tell me?" "Because if I did," she whispered, "I would have stayed, and staying would have ruined us both." The room vibrated with everything unsaid. Bruno closed his eyes, then placed his hand over hers on the piano bench. "I don't want to hide any more," he said. "Even if it costs me." Her fingers tightened around his. Tears slid down her cheeks unchecked. "I'm terrified," she admitted. "But I'm more terrified of waking up one day and realizing we were brave too late. He leaned his forehead against hers, a fragile, intimate distance. Then don't disappear again. I won't, she said. But this has to be real. Not secret songs. Not shadows. He nodded, resolute. Real. They sat there until the studio lights dimmed automatically, until the world narrowed to breath and warmth and a truth finally shared aloud. Outside, headlines waited, rumors ready to ignite. But inside that quiet room, something steadier formed, an understanding forged through conflict, confession, and the courage to finally stand where they had once only hidden. The silence they had built together shattered the moment a phone vibrated on the piano lid. Rose froze. Bruno's eyes snapped open. Don't, she whispered, already knowing it was too late. Bruno glanced down. A message preview glowed against the dark screen, cruel in its timing. We need to talk. Now. Management. He exhaled slowly, the kind of breath that comes before impact. They know something's off. Rose stood abruptly, pacing. Of course they do. They always do. A look held too long. A silence that lingers 1 second more than it should. This industry feeds on instincts. Bruno rose too, voice sharp. Then why did you come back in here? She turned on him, eyes blazing. Because I'm tired of running from the truth, while everyone else profits from lies. The door handle rattled. Both of them stiffened. Bruno, a voice called from outside. You in there. He stepped closer to Rose without thinking, placing himself between her and the door. You should hide. She laughed, breathless, bitter. Hide where? In your shadow again. The handle turned. The door opened halfway before Bruno slammed his hand against it. I'm busy, he said coolly. Session's not over. A pause. Suspicion thick in the air. We saw Rose come back this way. Her name hung between them like a blade. Bruno didn't hesitate. She left. Rose stared at him, stunned. Don't, she mouthed. You lying for her now, the voice pressed. I always protect my collaborators, Bruno replied evenly. Another beat. Then footsteps retreated, murmurs fading down the corridor. The moment the hallway fell quiet, Rose shoved his chest. Are you insane? He grabbed her wrists before she could pull away. I meant what I said. I'm done hiding. Her breath shook. You don't understand what this costs me. And you don't understand what it costs me watching you pretend I don't exist outside the stage. That's not fair, she snapped. I erased myself to survive, and I set myself on fire, so no one would see your name in the smoke. They stared at each other, raw, unarmored. Rosé's voice cracked first. Every time your song topped the charts, I wondered which line was me. Every time fans cried, I felt like a thief stealing grief that belonged to us. Bruno's grip loosened. I didn't want the world inside this. Neither did I, she whispered. But it followed us anyway. Another vibration. This time her phone. She looked at the screen and went pale. What is it? He asked. My manager, she said faintly. He says a photo just surfaced. From tonight. The hallway. Bruno's stomach dropped. Someone followed us. They always do, she said hollowly. She met his eyes, fear and resolve colliding. If this breaks, it won't just be gossip. They'll rewrite everything. Our past. Our work. They'll make it ugly. Bruno stepped closer, voice low but steady. Then we don't let them own it. You're talking about war, she said. I'm talking about truth, he replied. On our terms. Her laugh was shaky, almost hysterical. You really would burn the curtain down. For you. He didn't hesitate. Yes. The words settled into her bones. For you. Not fame. Not legacy. Not the music. Her eyes filled. I don't know if I'm brave like you. He cupped her face, thumb brushing her cheek. You're braver. You stayed silent when it hurt more to stay than to scream. She leaned into his touch, tears slipping free. If this comes out, I'll stand next to you, he said. Not behind. Not ahead. A knock thundered again, louder, final. Open the door, someone demanded. Now. Rose wiped her tears, quickly, straightening. She squared her shoulders, the performer slipping back into place, but her eyes held something new, defiance. She reached for Bruno's hand and squeezed once. No more disappearing. He squeezed back. No more shadows. Bruno opened the door. Lights flooded in. Faces. Phones. Questions already forming. And for the first time, neither of them stepped away. The hallway exploded with voices the moment the door swung open. Rose! Why are you here? Is this about the photo? Cameras didn't flash yet, but phones were already raised, hungry, trembling with anticipation. Bruno felt it, the shift in the air when a secret stops being private and starts becoming a story others want to own. He didn't let go of her hand. Rose felt it immediately. The weight of that choice hit her harder than any accusation. For years, instinct had taught her to pull away first, to survive by distance. This time she stayed. We were working, Bruno said calmly, his voice cutting through the noise. That's still allowed, right? A manager laughed sharply, humorless. Don't insult us. We saw the angle. We know exactly what it looked like. Rose stepped forward before anyone could pull her back. What it looked like or what it was. Silence snapped into place. That wasn't the answer they expected. Her manager's face tightened. Rose, this is not the time to play semantics. It is, she replied, voice steady but eyes burning. Because for years you taught me to let people misunderstand me as long as it was convenient. Bruno turned to look at her, surprised, and something close to awe flickered across his face. One of the executives crossed his arms. You realize what this could do. Headlines. Fan backlash. Contracts. Bruno scoffed. Funny how you only worry about fallout when it involves feelings. This isn't about feelings, the executive snapped. It's about damage control. Rose laughed softly, and that laugh hurt more than anger. Damage control from what? Two people standing too close. From history, her manager said coldly. From rumors. From narratives you can't take back once they start. Bruno leaned in, voice sharp. You already sell narratives. You just don't like when they're real. The word real echoed. Someone's phone buzzed. Another screen lit up. They're posting it, a staffer whispered. It's live. Rose's breath caught. For a split second, fear clawed up her spine, the old fear. The one that whispered run, deny, disappear. Instead, she looked at Bruno. Say it, she murmured. Before they twist it. He didn't hesitate. She matters to me, Bruno said loudly. She always has. Gasps rippled through the hallway. Her manager hissed her name like a warning. Don't let him drag you into this. Rose turned, eyes flashing. He's not dragging me. I'm walking. You don't understand. No, she cut in. You don't understand. I spent years shrinking my truth so it wouldn't scare anyone. I won't do that again. Bruno's voice softened as he looked at her. You don't have to do this alone. She nodded, tears threatening but unashamed now. I know. A reporter pushed forward. Is this a confirmation? Are you too? Bruno stepped in front of Rose instinctively. You don't get to interrogate her. Rose touched his arm. It's okay. She faced the cameras, heart pounding so loud she was sure it could be heard. There are things we're not ready to explain, she said. But there are things we won't deny. Such as, someone pressed. She glanced sideways at Bruno, then back. That respect came first. That care followed. That nothing here is fake. Bruno added quietly, and nothing here is new. The hallway erupted again, questions overlapping, voices rising, but something fundamental had shifted. They weren't chasing a rumor anymore. They were facing two people who refused to crumble. Later, much later, the studio emptied again, but the world outside was on fire. Rose sat on the floor of the green room, back against the couch, knees pulled to her chest. Her phone buzzed nonstop. Messages, alerts, names she hadn't heard in years resurfacing with opinions she hadn't asked for. Bruno crouched in front of her. You okay? She laughed weakly. Ask me in a year. He smiled, then grew serious. I meant what I said. If you want me to step back. She shook her head immediately. No. Don't undo this. Don't make it smaller to make me feel safer. He studied her face, searching for doubt. You're shaking. So are you, she pointed out. He reached out, brushing his thumb against her knuckle. I've been shaking for years. Her eyes filled again. Why didn't you ever tell me back then? Not in lyrics. Not in metaphors. Just like this. Bruno exhaled, sitting beside her. Because I was afraid that if I said it out loud, I'd lose it. Or worse, you'd feel trapped. She leaned her head against his shoulder. I felt trapped anyway. Just not by you. They sat there as the noise outside grew louder, then faded into distance. Rose broke the silence first. Everything's different now. Bruno nodded. Yeah. Are you scared? She asked. He thought for a moment. Terrified, but also relieved. She smiled faintly. Me too. For the first time, the fear wasn't about being seen. It was about how impossible it would be to ever go back to hiding. The morning broke without mercy. Rose woke to the sound of her phone vibrating like a living thing. Relentless, furious. Notifications stacked faster than she could read them. Headlines screamed in languages she didn't speak. Photos dissected frame by frame. Her smile in that hallway frozen and weaponized. She sat up slowly, chest tight. For a moment, she forgot where she was. Then she remembered everything. The doorbell rang. Not a polite ring. A demand. She wrapped a cardigan around herself and opened the door to find Bruno standing there, eyes shadowed, hair undone, phone clutched in his hand like it might explode. They're asking me to deny it, he said without greeting. Publicly. Today. Her stomach dropped. Mine too. They stood there, facing each other in the narrow doorway, the distance between them heavier than any embrace. This was the moment they had never rehearsed. No music. No script. They say it'll pass, Rose said quietly. That if we call it a misunderstanding, fans will accept it. That silence can still save us. Bruno laughed, bitter. Silence almost killed us. She stepped aside, letting him in. The room smelled like coffee gone cold and sleeplessness. Bruno paced, running a hand through his hair. They're threatening to pull future collaborations, he continued. Sponsors. Tours. Rose sat on the edge of the couch, hands clenched. They told me I could lose everything I've built if I don't cooperate. He stopped pacing. And what do you want? The question hung there, terrifying in its simplicity. She looked up at him, eyes rimmed red but steady. I want to stop lying about the one thing that ever felt real. Bruno's breath caught. He crossed the room in 2 steps, kneeling in front of her. Say it again. I don't want to deny you, she said. I don't want to erase what we are just to make other people comfortable. He cupped her face, thumbs brushing away tears she hadn't realized were falling. Then we don't. Her voice trembled. If we don't, there's no going back. He pressed his forehead to hers. I don't want to go back. Hours later, they stood in front of microphones they hadn't asked for, lights too bright, air too thin. The room buzzed with expectation, skepticism, hunger. Bruno spoke first. We're not here to sell a story, he said. We're here to stop one. A murmur rippled through the press. Rose stepped forward, heart pounding but spine straight. What you saw wasn't a scandal. It was honesty catching up to us. A reporter called out. So you're confirming a relationship? She inhaled. I'm confirming that what matters to me isn't something I'm ashamed of. Bruno reached for her hand openly this time. Cameras flashed. Gasps followed. This isn't a strategy, he added. It's a consequence of telling the truth too late. Questions flew. Accusations. Praise. Fury. Rose answered one last time, voice clear. We're not asking for permission. We're asking for space to be human. Then they walked away. Not together in secrecy. Together in full view. That night, when the noise finally dulled and the world moved on to its next obsession, they sat on a quiet balcony overlooking a city that never slept. The air was cool. The silence earned. Rose rested her head on Bruno's shoulder. Do you think it was worth it? He kissed the top of her head gently. Ask me again when the fear fades. She smiled softly. It already is. Below them, the city glowed, indifferent and alive. Above them, the sky stretched wide, unbothered by rumors or rules. For the first time, they weren't hiding in hallways or whispering truths into darkness. They were exactly where they chose to be. And that, finally, was enough.